first of all, thank you for having me on the call. Really appreciate it. My name's April Dunnam. I'm a Microsoft MVP in Power Apps and Flow. I own a business called ThriveFast based out here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on Twitter at April Dunnam, and I do have a blog called the SharePointSiren.com. I blog a lot about SharePoint, Power Apps, and Flow related topics. So I want to show actually two things today. The first is my planner task card view formatting sample that I just submitted. So I'm just going to dive right into demo here on that. So I'm going to start with my inspiration. So this is actually a need for a client. They use SharePoint task list, but they also use Planner still. So they want to kind of have the task list match what they see in Planner. So my inspiration here is this Planner task board here. So I wanted the list to be formatted in these boxes, kind of like Planner. I needed to be able to pull in the assigned to's profile picture. Ideally have the date formatted like that, and then utilize these icons for if it's pending, and have a strike through if it's completed. So I took this as my inspiration, and let's just dive back over to SharePoint then. And this is my SharePoint list. So this is just a custom list, and we've created some fields here. So title to hold the task title. We have a due date field, which as you see also has some column formatting on it to show red if it's overdue. We have just an effort field, people picker that's assigned to, and a choice status field, and a due date. So that's all needed, that what we need from a requirement standpoint for the SharePoint list for this to work. So if I switch over to my views here, I have a Kanban style view with the formatting applied. So this is what we're going to get when we apply this view sample. So as you can see, it looks similar-ish to the planner list that we looked at there. So we have our status at the very top. We have the title there, and we're using the Office UI fabric to pull in some icons. So we have the calendar icon to show the due date. We have that same icon that you may have noticed back on Planner to show that this is a pending and progress item. And then we have a little warning sign also if it's overdue, all pulling from the Office UI fabric. We're also utilizing the built-in functionality here. So if I need to edit this task and change its status, for example, I can click the little pencil, and that'll open up our view form here, and I can just change the status quickly to, let's say, this one's completed. And when I do, the formatting takes over, strikes that item through for me to let me know that it's completed. So some tips here on exactly some key elements of what this is doing. So this is actually based on another sample already in there in the GitHub, and it's the profile card sample. So I kind of just took that and customized it to my needs to make it look more like Planner. So some features with the view formatting that I'm using is the custom row action. So that's what enables you to do things like the default click and the delete functionality that you saw. I'm using the Office UI fabric to get the custom icons and theme colors. And so from a code perspective, from the JSON, I'm dynamically setting those icons. So you might have noticed that based on status, different icons were showing. So this is how you can do that within the view formatting with a simple if statement. So you can pass in the name of your status column here, and you can check if it's in progress, then display this icon. If it's completed, display this icon. And if it's delayed, display this icon. The other thing I'm doing from a styling perspective is if it is complete, I am doing that strike through. So that's another if statement that we can use in the text decoration object in the CSS. So if the status is complete, then we want to do a line through. So I want to jump over quickly to the Office UI fabric and show how I was utilizing those icons in my sample here. So as you can see, like I have a check mark to show that this one's completed as well. So if you're not using the Office UI fabric for this, this is definitely your friend. So you can just go to developer.microsoft.com/fabric. And if you go to styles here, you'll see iconography. So that's where I'm getting those icons from. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you see all the icons. You can search the icons. And then if you hover over it, you'll get the name of the icon that you'll use in your view formatting sample. A quick tip, so I used Planner as inspiration for this. So for example, I knew I wanted this little circle icon to show if my status was pending. Well, if I didn't know what this was or what to search for, I could use my browser tools, and I could right click and inspect that. And I can actually see what icon that they're using here without having to search through the UI fabric and figure out what that name is. So I can see here that it's MS icon circle half full. So I can use that in my JSON for my view formatting, and I know that that's what's being used. So just quick tip for that there. And those are the major pieces to the code here. Another quick tip that I wanted to show, especially for those that are just getting started with view formatting and haven't used it extensively yet. So this is the GitHub repo. So if you want to find my sample out here, that's the planner inspired task card. So if I click on that, it lists out all the details. So here are the required fields that are needed for the setup. But if I want to copy the code and use it in my own environment, you go to the JSON file. When you do that by default, you'll notice that it has all of these numbers in it. So if I wanted to use this, if I were to copy it from here, those numbers would be copied over as well. So if you click on raw here, it takes you into a non-formatted raw view. So if you copy and paste that, you don't have to worry about those numbers being carried over when you try to implement this in your environment. Okay. So that is my view formatting. It also has default, so if delete options. So if I want to delete that, I can click delete, and it will remove that task for me from my task list. And the cool thing about this is it is responsive. So if I were to embed this on a page, for example, so here's my SharePoint homepage, it would natively respond and shrink down as needed. So as you can see, it's a one column layout here instead. So works pretty well. And the next one I want to show you quickly is my Twitter formatting demo. So I'm actually, for this, using Flow. I have a flow that I run to monitor for and run it through sentiment analysis for negative tweets, and I have it written out to a SharePoint list. And this is a flow template that you can use and get started with pretty easily. So with this, I wanted it to kind of match the look and feel of Twitter. So that's what I did here. And again, I just started from another example on here that kind of had some row formatting already going on. And all I did was put in some things like a formatted date to show how Twitter formats their date with the month name and the day. And I used, again, some Office UI Fabric icons to show like the retweet count. So that's kind of like the most similar icon I could find out there to the retweet icon. And then we have this little share icon. So if you were to click that, it would actually go to the person's tweet in Twitter so that you could look at it and you could share it. And I also made their name a hyperlink here. So if you were to click that, it would take you straight to that person's Twitter profile. So pretty cool. Again, we're pulling in their Twitter profile image. So the flow is doing all the hard work for us. It's finding the tweet. It's writing all of this out to the list for us with the URL for their image. And we're just applying styling over that to make it look kind of like Twitter. So same thing for this. It is responsive. So if we go back to that home page, you might have noticed that it's on the right-hand side here. I have the flow tweets. And it is shrinking down and scaling depending on the page that you have it on. So that was that. And before I move on, I wanted to share some tips with you guys about lessons learned with this. So I started with view formatting a few months ago, and I've did about 4 different samples. So some quick tips here. Always start with an existing sample if possible. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. That's kind of the path of least resistance here. You don't have to worry about writing the JSON from scratch. So usually there's an example. So like take my planner task card example. There was already an example out there that had that in the square boxes that I knew I needed. So just start with that and tweak it to your needs. Another lesson learned, a tip, is make one change at a time and make sure that change works before moving on. So back in that planner task card example, I knew that I wanted to add those icons. So maybe I'd go into the sample, add the if statement for those icons, make sure it works before I try to drastically change, the styling or where stuff is structured within the JSON object. So that'll save you a lot of headaches if you just make one change at a time and test it. Next tip, Office UI Fabric is your friend. So you can get all of the icons you need, even utilize some of their CSS classes in your JSON, so you don't have to write your own custom styles and anything like that, or go out and find all these icons. And then another one is consider offloading complex formulas to a calculated field. So if you need to do something like in my Twitter example here, I'll actually jump back to that real quick. I'm utilizing that to do the format. So this is just a basic date field with the time in SharePoint. So I'm actually using a calculated column to make it show the month name spelled out like that and the date. So if we go here to our list settings real quick, you'll see I have a tweet formatted date calculated column. So rather than having to worry about, well, what's the formula to do that, for view formatting, just let SharePoint do the hard work. If you're already using SharePoint, you probably already know the calculated column formula to do that. Just take in your field name and then format it with the month and the day, and then reference that calculated column in your view formatting instead. So that does all the hard work for you. And lastly, before I leave you guys, if you built something cool, share it. This SharePoint community truly is awesome. If you don't know GitHub at all and you're scared, like, how do I contribute this when I don't know anything about GitHub? There's people out there to help you. I know David Warner, Chris Kent, any of those guys, they're super helpful and eager to help and friendly. There's nothing to be scared about. They can help get you started to share your samples because we can all benefit for it. So that's all I had.
Excellent. Thank you, April. Really great demo, really cool looking stuff. And one thing what I wanted to kind of reinforce here is also the design pattern which April used here related on the Twitter, because now that would then mean that the person who's accessing, for example, the front page of the portal, you do not need to have access on Twitter. What if it's not a Twitter? What if it's your, let's say, CRM system, or what if it's your business system in on-premises? You can use Flow to replicate the relevant data to a SharePoint list, and then you can use the JSON definitions to make it look really cool, right?
Yep, exactly. Great.
So
thank you.
No code, and thank you, April, on that one.
Yep.
It's a no-code solution, except obviously we talked about this one a few times. The JSON does look almost code as well. So is it code or is it not code? It's almost like PowerShell. PowerShell was the evil scam of Microsoft learning IT pros to develop. Now, are we doing the same with JSON and the non-devs? We'll see. But thank you, April. Really great demo. Awesome stuff.
Thanks.